Welcome back to the I Am More Than podcast. I have missed you guys. Happy 2024. I hope everyone's holidays went well and you're having a good start to the new year. I took a much longer break from podcast recording than I anticipated. The goal was to take off just a couple months to secure all of our sponsorship for season 5 of the podcast, which can't believe that we're already coming out with season 5, but I decided to kind of take a step back for a little bit longer because I've had some deeply personal stuff going on. And you can probably tell if you're watching this or listening. I'm a little anxious, a little nervous about this one because it's not something that I ever thought that I would release or talk about on a public platform like this. But I launched the I Am More Than podcast 3 years ago with the goal of helping women feel less alone. I wanted a safe place for women to be able to talk about their experiences and share their experiences with each other and learn from each other and grow and empathize. And we've done such a great job of that. I'm so proud of all of the work that we've done through the I Am More Than podcast. I'm so proud of the lives that we've been able to impact through this. And it's been a deeply healing passion project for me. I've talked about a lot of things on here that I never in a million years thought I would talk about. We've shared some incredible stories. And typically when I've talked about stuff that I've personally gone through, it's when I'm on the other side of that healing journey, not when I'm in the thick of it. But this one's going to be a little bit different because I want to open up to you guys about something that I am facing in my personal life, and I'm trusting that this is going to reach the people that it needs to reach. And it's mainly for my OG More Than Movement members. So if this is your first time ever tuning in to the I Am More Than podcast, hey, welcome. So glad you're here, but this is probably not the podcast to start with. We have 68 other incredible episodes for you to listen to, but probably not this one. And before I really dive into this episode, I want to put a trigger warning on it. And I really want you guys to listen to that trigger warning. So if you are dealing with any type of fertility issues, know somebody that is, or if this is just a really personal topic to you, please protect your peace and don't listen. Go listen to another episode, go listen to another podcast. Because it's not easy stuff to talk about and it's not easy stuff to hear. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that if you are currently in the midst of struggling with fertility issues, it's really hard to hear other people talk about it. So there is a trigger warning on this. And part of the reason that I had been so silent on the podcast for the last couple months of 2023 is because I was preparing the season 5 opener where I was going to be sharing with all of you guys that I was pregnant. And I was so excited to be able to talk about what the journey had been like because it had been an absolute roller coaster and something that me and my husband both were like still in shock over and really excited about. And that was supposed to launch on January 1st. And instead of doing that, I'm going to be talking to you guys about my miscarriage. Whew. This is very unscripted, as all of my podcast episodes are. I never put down like a layout or a format of it, even though I probably should have, because this is still a very emotional topic. And like I mentioned at the beginning, it's something that I'm still very much in and still very much dealing with. But it's something that I feel very convicted and called to talk about on here for some reason, even though I don't even fully understand why the heck I'm doing it. But I want to be able to share my story because unfortunately, this is something that far too many women experience and something that many women suffer in silence with. And I fully understand the choice to not talk about it. Trust me, I never thought that I was going to talk to anybody about it, let alone get on my podcast and talk to hundreds and thousands of you about what I'm going through. But it's something that shouldn't be normalized, but it should be talked about in a way that women that are in it don't feel so alone, because it's a really isolating experience. So before I kind of get into the miscarriage chapter and what I'm going through even right now, I do want to give it a moment to be able to share the excitement that we had and the really happy news of finding out that I was pregnant, because whether I like it or not, this is part of my story. And I was really excited. So, okay. I kept thinking, like, I've cried all the possible tears that I could get out. There couldn't be any left. And like, I keep surprising myself. So bear with me. I'm sorry to be crying in your ear. But I want to take you guys back to when I found out. My husband and I had decided that we wanted to do our first year of marriage, just the two of us, and weren't quite ready to have a family, even though we knew we always wanted to have a family. I always wanted to be a mom. And when we hit the year anniversary of our wedding, we decided that it was time to just start trying, because who knew what the process was going to look like. And so I started kind of just prepping my body, like middle of last year. I was working with Gut Personal, one of our sponsors, this past season, just going through all my gut health, and I was feeling really good. And I went off birth control and I was taking prenatals. I was doing all the things, still kind of like in disbelief that that was the chapter that we were even semi entering. So fast forward to October, we go on our year anniversary trip. We did an unbelievable cruise through Greece and Turkey and Italy, and it was the best trip that we have ever been on. It was so much fun. And when we got back, I just immediately felt different. I feel like for any of you listening that have had any type of like health issues, it requires you to be very in tune with your body. And I'm wildly in tune with my body, and I just felt off. And so I kind of kept this to myself for the first week that we were back. And I had a follow-up doctor appointment the week after. And I was just doing like a normal checkup to be able to check up on my anti-anxiety medication and my ADHD medication. And I was chatting with my doctor and just said, like, hey, hypothetically speaking, if I were to be pregnant, what's the soonest we would be able to tell? And she looks at my history and sees that I was on birth control for 15 years and had just got off of it. And she just said, honestly, I don't even want to get your hopes up. I'm not going to test you. It will most likely take anywhere from like 8 months to a year. So just be patient and don't expect anything, basically. And I had the most overwhelming, intuitive feeling I've ever had in my life that was like, you're 100% pregnant. So I left that doctor appointment. I went straight to HEB for all my Texas fam out here and got a pregnancy test. I hadn't even missed a period yet. So I was telling myself that I was going to wait a week. And if it hadn't come, then I would take it. Well, I am an overly anxious psycho, and I made it about 30 seconds being home before being like, I absolutely need to test this right now. So didn't tell anybody I was doing it. Didn't even tell my husband. He's on work calls. So I go in, I take the pregnancy test, and it was such a weird feeling because I had never obviously taken a pregnancy test where I was like hopeful that I was pregnant, and a million thoughts start running through your mind. And logically, I was telling myself, like, there's no way that you are. I think in some ways just not to get my hopes up, even though like intuitively I had a really strong feeling that I could be. And I didn't even wait the full like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you're supposed to do before I looked at it. And there was two of the most defined lines I've ever seen. Like, it was clear as day that I was pregnant. And I was in complete shock. So I hurried. I took another one, and this one was one of those digital ones where it either said pregnant or not pregnant. And I literally stared at it for it to just come across digitally, and it said pregnant. So I always thought I was going to be one of those people that did like something super cute to tell my husband that we're pregnant and like that I could be cool, calm, and collected. Not at all. Like, I did not know what to do with myself. I paced this house for 45 minutes, just like not even knowing what to think. Like, what happens next? What do I do? And I had to have somebody in it with me. So I keep knocking on the door to my husband's office asking like, hey, almost done, almost done. And finally 5 o'clock comes around and I'm like, hey, come with me. He has no idea, obviously, what to expect. And I bring him into our room and surprise him with the pregnancy tests, and he was in just as much shock as I was, but just so excited. It was such a wonderful and beautiful moment. Just me, Brendan, and our puppy bear. And we just cried and celebrated, and we're so excited. And then it's like, well, now what? Like, what happens next? Like, obviously, I've never been through this before. So I'm literally Googling, like, what do you do after you find out that you're pregnant? And I can't keep anything to myself, as you guys probably know. That's also why I started a podcast, because I'm far too open and I share way too much. So that same day, I race over to my mom's house, surprise my mom, surprise my sister. We're all celebrating. We're all in shock. And I call just doctor's offices the next day just to make an appointment. And they're all putting appointments like way far out. And obviously, again, I didn't know how any of this stuff works. So they get like the first day of your last period, and that's how they find out how far along you are. So at the time, I was 4 weeks. So super, super early on in the pregnancy. And I had felt amazing, which was one of the first like telltale signs that something was up, because typically I struggle a ton with my sleep. I was sleeping like a baby. I felt great, but I had always thought and seen in like movies and stuff that the people that find out they're pregnant, they're always like violently ill in the morning. And so for that first week, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I feel great. This is going to be an amazing journey. And we find this clinic that you can go in and do an ultrasound at 5 weeks so that they can confirm your pregnancy and you get to see what's going on down there. So we go in, it's confirmed, still feeling fantastic. And I was just, naive to the fact that there was a possibility that a miscarriage could happen. And I just never allowed myself to go there. I had no reason to think that that would ever be part of my story, nor does any woman ever. I think you just go with what you're told and how you're feeling. And so I was excited and I wanted to tell people. We told a couple of our close friends, and I really wanted to wait until I heard the heartbeat to start telling more and more people. So right when I hit 6 weeks, I became violently sick and was nauseous all day long, not just in the morning. Literally working from bed, felt absolutely terrible, was exhausted, taking like 2 naps a day, sleeping all through the night. And I go in for the 6-week appointment, and we got to hear the heartbeat for the first time, which was the best sound ever heard in my life. And the ultrasound technician said it was the size of a sweet pea. So we've been calling it sweet pea ever since. And it was just the best. It's the first time that it felt real. Like, I think for your first trimester, you don't really feel like you're pregnant outside of the fact that you just don't feel good. But it's like, well, now what? You have to wait so long before you see a doctor. A lot of people aren't telling other people. And I felt like it basically was like written across my face. And every time I walked into a room, somebody could tell, even though they absolutely couldn't. But I was beyond bloated. And I'm told that's just like a rush of hormones. But I feel like I looked like I was like 6 months pregnant, so bloated. My boobs hurt so bad. It was like, okay, this is going to be a long 9 months. So after we heard the heartbeat, I decided to tell my whole family. And we were waiting to tell Brendan's family till we saw them in person over Christmas. So we were going to see all of his mom's side, all of his dad's side. And we came up with all the cute little ways that we were going to tell them. And we went 0 to 100 really freaking fast. Like, Bren went total crazy dad mode where he's like, we got to upgrade the house. We got to upgrade the car. We're already planning out the nursery. We're moving things around. Like, we got excited quickly. I had a name picked out. I had everything. So when it's time for the first doctor appointment, I was just excited. I had just seen the sweet pea 10 days earlier and couldn't wait to like just see how many things changed in the ultrasound and meet with the doctor and just kind of start the whole process and make it feel that much more real. And we went into my first doctor appointment, went in to go get an ultrasound. And I knew something was wrong from the moment I laid down on the table. But as the technician was looking around to find Sweet Pea, she did, no problem. But then she says, okay, we're going to do a vaginal ultrasound. And said it's totally normal for women under 10 weeks to do a vaginal one. So I'm like, okay, awesome. I'm just praying, like, please, nothing be wrong. And the rest of it gets to be kind of a blur, but I just remember her saying that there's Sweet Pea, but there's no movement. And I basically blacked out everything else. And thank God Brendan was with me, and he was an absolute rock star and handled literally everything, like carried me into the next appointment. So from that, I went in and met with my doctor. And I mean, everybody that you meet is like, there's nothing they can say. There's nothing I can say. I'm in shock. They're hurting for me, but uncomfortable. They don't know me, but they're trying to console me. Like, it's weird. So the doctor comes in and basically tells me, okay, you have two options. You can take this pill that will force your body to have a miscarriage at home, or you can do a surgery. And I remember her talking about the pros and cons of both, and Brennan asking questions, and her asking me, so what do you want to do? I just remember thinking, like, I came in here to have a healthy baby. Like, I don't want either option. I don't want to do either. And from there, it's like you have to go get all these different tests, and I had to go get my blood taken, and I'm walking into these different appointments in an absolute daze, like between crying, staring, being exhausted, in disbelief. Like, there's such a roller coaster of emotions. And I remember sitting there and just realizing, like, life goes on. Like, life keeps happening. My world just stopped. But everybody around me, like, they're joking about the holidays and making conversation with each other. And, like, it was such a weird out of body experience. So we left the appointment, and I had the weekend to see if my body was going to naturally do anything or if I had to make a decision by the next week. And the timing on this is beautiful and terrible all at the same time, because I had gone in on a Thursday morning, and I was supposed to be going to the airport Thursday night to go on my first ever brand trip. And I was so excited about it. I was going out with Celebrity Cruises, which you guys know I am a huge Celebrity Cruise fan. Brendan and I went on one for our honeymoon. We went on one for our 1-year anniversary. And I was invited to come out to see the brand new inauguration of their ship in Fort Lauderdale. And I was able to bring my sister as my plus one. We're going to have this wonderful girls' weekend that I've been planning for months. I was so excited about it. And Brendan's best friend was coming out here so that they could have a guys' weekend. And my initial feeling was obviously like, I want to go crawl in bed and rot. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk about it. And ultimately, we had decided that there's absolutely nothing that I could do, nothing that he could do. And that unfortunately, like, life had to move on. And in a beautiful coincidence, he had a lunch scheduled with our pastor and ended up going, telling him what's going on, and came back with just a whole lot of wisdom, basically talking about how you can allow yourself to experience joy in the midst of experiencing really hard things and really hard seasons, and that you shouldn't feel guilty for experiencing joy. And Brendan really encouraged me, you need to go and you need to enjoy yourself this weekend, and maybe this would be a good thing. So I go, and it ended up being a wonderful trip. I had so much quality time with my sister. It's the perfect person that I wanted to be with. But it was really the first reminder, and something that's really stuck with me, that you never know what's going on in somebody's life. I had contracts that I needed to oblige by. I don't know if that's even the right word, but contracts that I had to be posting certain things and be going to these events and stuff that I was thrilled to do because I really wanted to do it. And obviously, like, you can never guess the timing of stuff like this, but as I'm posting this stuff internally and personally, I'm like just in turmoil. And it was just a reminder that, like, you just never know what's going on, and people are sharing with you what they choose to share, and to just be nice to people. But I came back from that trip and had to face reality again and make this decision of what I was going to do. And one of the only things that honestly was giving me peace in that chapter is that I had had women in the past that had confided in me and told me that they had gone through a miscarriage, and a handful of other women that had shared on social media that they had gone through one. And I had to connect with them and talk with them about it. And it was one of the best and most healing things that I could have done, because it is such an isolating feeling. And you feel so ashamed. And I felt so embarrassed, for lack of a better word. And being able to just connect with others and hear what their journey was like and hear their recovery. And for a lot of them, they went on to have healthy pregnancies. And it was another one of those reminders, and I've said it on here many times, but often you can use your pain for purpose. That every woman that I was talking to that was sharing her story with me, like, that was an extremely painful chapter for her that she was on the other side of, and now she was pouring that wisdom and love and guidance into me in a time that I really, really needed it. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast episode too is because I understand that there's some women that may not have that. And you may not be connecting with other women that have gone through it. You may not have people close to you that have gone through this. And if this podcast, if my story can just help you feel a little less alone, that it's worth it. Okay. So I had one girlfriend that unfortunately had found out she was having, or that she had had a miscarriage 2 weeks prior to me. And she had done the pill option and had just shared that it was very emotionally, physically, mentally traumatic. And when I had spoken with the doctor, she said that if I chose to do the surgery, that my body should recover quicker. It is less traumatic. Notice how I'm doing quotations around that. Less traumatic, and that you can move forward with your life a little bit quicker. And so I chose to do surgery, and really, again, just didn't know what to expect. I've never been through this before. I didn't want to do anything at all. But the crazy part to me, and so a misconception that I had about miscarriages, is that if it happens to you, like, your body does that naturally. Something's wrong, your body alerts you, and then your body just kind of bounces back and you're able to hopefully get pregnant again someday. And that's just so different from what the reality actually is. So I had had what they call a miscarriage, or a silent miscarriage. So I had no symptoms, I had no bleeding, I had nothing. So sometime between the 10 days that I had heard the heartbeat and that I went in for the next ultrasound, Sweet Pea stopped growing. And I remember thinking, like, how cool it was that a woman's body can have 2 beating hearts independent from each other. Like, just the women in general, like, everything that our bodies do, the changes that we go through, like, we're freaking unbelievable. Like, it's no wonder that God chose us to be the ones to carry children, because we are freaking awesome. But when the heartbeat wasn't there, I was just in denial for a long time. And I still think there's bits and pieces of denial that I'm still in. But for my health and safety. I mean, we have no choice, but you have to go through with one of these options. So I go in for surgery, and from what I'm told, surgery is successful. You should recover quickly. You'll have a little bit of cramping, maybe just a little bit of spotting, and then your hormones will just start regulating over the next 4 to 6 weeks. You should ovulate, you should have a period, and move on with your life. So that's kind of what I was fully expecting. And the following day, I actually felt pretty good. And then every day after that, I felt like absolute hell. The recovery for me has actually been one of the most difficult parts, if not the most difficult part of this whole process. I think finding out that you have a miscarriage or you had a miscarriage is devastating, and it's painful, and it's traumatic, and it's terrible. But the physical stuff, is in another league of its own. It's like a constant reminder of what's happening. So I don't want to get too graphic, but I also want to talk about it solely because I had never heard anybody talk about it. So I didn't know what to expect. So I found myself in the middle of the night just like Googling my symptoms and getting horrible videos and mom blogs and terrible things about it that just made me feel even worse and scared me instead of just like hearing what was normal and what's not normal. So again, sharing my experience so that I hope that you never, ever, ever experience this. But I hope that if you do someday, you can think back to this and maybe know what to expect a little bit more, or at least know, again, that you're not alone. So again, trigger warning, full disclosure. I don't know when I'm going to release this episode, but as of now, I'm a month out of surgery and I'm still bleeding. And there's been days in there where it's just been unbelievable, agonizing pain. And I mean, everybody's body is different, and everybody's body is going to handle this very differently. And I had kind of had this thought, or maybe it was a hope, that it's like my body's just going to bounce back super quickly and I'm going to start feeling like myself again. And I'm going to get my energy back. My hormones are going to chill out and my skin's going to stop breaking out constantly. I'm going to stop being so bloated. Like all of these things, the symptoms would start to go away. And that's just not my reality. They haven't. And something else that I wasn't prepared for, nobody ever told me, was the process of your hormones regulating again. So there's something called an HCG, and you have to get this blood test after you have a miscarriage, or at least, again, this is just my experience. I don't know if this is how it is for everybody, but I had a blood test the day that I found out about it. I had another blood test the day of the surgery, and then I had another blood test a week ago when I had to go back in for a follow-up appointment with the doctor. And my HCG levels, you want to see that they're dropping. So when you are pregnant, when you're in your first trimester, from my understanding, they're supposed to double like every day. And that's why your hormones are changing constantly. That's just showing that you have a healthy pregnancy. And afterwards, it takes a while for your hormones to just regulate and for that HCG to go back down to zero. You need it to go back down to zero for your body to start ovulating again, to start having a period, to be able to try for a baby. And again, I just assumed that after this whole month, like my hormones must be back down and we're good to go. And that's just not the case. I got my results back and my blood still shows and that my hormones and my body is still pregnant. So if I were to take a pregnancy test, it'd still be positive, which is a complete mind fuck. And it just takes more time to go down. They are going down. It's just going down slowly. Everybody's body is completely different, and you just can't put a timeline on it. And there's nothing you can do to speed it up. There's nothing you can do to change it, as much as I would love to. And I just feel like if I would have known that that was part of the process, then maybe I just wouldn't have been so shocked. I think I'm one of those people that I believe that knowledge is power. I'd rather know way more and just prepare myself in whatever way I can than go into something blind. And I feel like this whole couple months has just been, I've been blind and feeling like I just don't know what to expect every day. And I don't know that anything could have really prepared me, but I do wish that I had at least heard somebody else's story a little bit more, just so that, again, I knew what to expect and didn't feel like I was going through it so alone. There's so many different layers and grieving that comes with something like this. And I think one of the first things that you do, or at least something that I did, I consider myself a very positive person, is I would go straight to like, well, at least it's not as bad as whatever, or it could have always been worse, or you go to like the most extreme things in your mind and you're like, okay, so just to minimize this, like it's really not that bad. Where I think just sitting in the fact that like it freaking sucks. No matter what way you look at it, no matter what way you go through it, whether your body does it naturally, whether you choose a pill or a surgery or whatever, it freaking sucks. And it's not something that anybody wants. And I think once I got to a point of just allowing myself to just be okay with the fact that like it freaking sucks and there's nothing I can do, then I could actually start healing a little bit. And maybe that's acceptance. I don't know what it is. I know that there's 5 stages of grief. I've been through every single one of them 5 times and I'm still continuing to go through them, but I cannot imagine going through this chapter without having a strong support system. My husband has been a freaking rock star. Like, has carried me through this entire process. And I do want to share a couple things with you guys about specifics that he did to support me on this, because if you're listening and you love somebody that's going through this, or if you're going through this and you feel misunderstood and you want it communicated to somebody else, like I'll share with you what I can, and based on my experience, what I think helped throughout the process. But I think having a supportive partner that was not only there for me behind closed doors, but also was there to advocate for me was really helpful, because I didn't feel like I could advocate for myself. I feel like I just froze anytime I was in a doctor's office or wanted to ask questions or was asked about it. Like it was just too much. So he handled all of conversations between the doctors, between the anesthesiologists, and dealing with insurance. Like there's so many logistical stuff that has to go into this that would have been so hard for me to handle. I'm really thankful he took that on his plate. And I think just being there and knowing that it's an emotional roller coaster. Something that he's done that has really helped me is that he'll ask, how are you doing at the moment? And it kind of allows me to like just take it moment by moment, because there's days that I've woken up where I'm like, oh my God, I kind of feel like myself. And then halfway through the day, I'm in bed crying. And it's not only hormones going crazy, but it's also just, there's no like manual on how you get through something like this. So being able to just say like, hey, I'm okay at the moment, or I'm good at the moment, let's talk about something else, or I'm not okay. Then he's like, awesome, let's snuggle in bed, let's watch a show, let me order you food, let me call your mom. Like he can step in and do the nope, I'm fine, and then crying by myself. So really taking it moment by moment. And something that I've had to really come to realize too, and just see, is that I also have empathy for everyone that loves me, that it's really difficult to watch somebody that you love go through something like this. It's hard for me to know that my husband's gone through this. And so instead of like lashing out, which trust me, there's been plenty of that, but instead of lashing out, like, you don't know what it's like, mostly like he is experiencing it in a different perspective. And same with family. Nobody's going to know what to say because there is nothing to say. But if you have family and friends that come around you and they're saying something, even if it's something dumb, like when people are grieving, you don't know what's going to come out of your mouth. Like just knowing that they're showing up and they're saying stuff because they care and they're doing the best they can, like kind of just lets everybody off the hook. You included, like I've said some crazy off the wall stuff too, and everybody just kind of lets me talk when I need to talk and just knows that like she's going to be okay. And that's been helpful. Confiding in the people that you're close with. I had only actually FaceTime called my best friend to tell her. Everybody else that we did talk to was in person, and there was just a handful of people. And I think that's where some of my embarrassment came from too, because then you start thinking like, how in the world am I supposed to tell them that this happened? And that's another thing that Brendan really took over. He talked to everybody and kind of alleviated that uncomfortable conversation for me, which I'm grateful for. But there's, again, nothing that you can say, but showing up for people is one of the most meaningful things you can do. I cannot tell you how many beautiful flowers and cards and care packages and meals and texts and voicemails that I got from people just telling me that they loved me. Whew. And they were thinking about me and praying for me. Just saying something honestly meant everything to me. And now that I look back at it, not like fully, I'm still in it, but not like in it in the same way. It's just such a testament to the incredible people that we have in our life. And I'm really grateful that we did tell the people that we did tell, because they were able to be a really strong support system for us. And I also didn't feel comfortable sharing with people what was actually going on. LOL to me literally doing a podcast telling you everything. But at the time, I didn't feel comfortable just sharing with people that weren't like my very close people what was going on. But just getting those messages of like, hey, I don't know what you're going through, but I love you and hope you're okay, meant a lot. I had a couple send us a $50 Grubhub gift card just saying, hey, don't know what you're going through, but whenever you're going through something tough, sometimes it's hard to think about dinner. Like, here's food on us. It's just that little stuff means so much more than you even realize it does. So just showing up for the person that you love and communicating your support, showing them that you're there is really, really useful. And also just knowing that it's a journey and some days are going to be better than others. And eventually you start to heal and life moves forward. And you continue to have joy in the midst of a difficult season. And I think that's where I'm at. I feel like I really deeply mourned in that chapter. And I'm talking about mourning too. Something else came to mind that I'm glad that I did, even though it was horribly painful to do, is I wrote a letter the day before the surgery and just got a lot of the thoughts that were weighing on my head and on my heart down on paper, and felt like in a small way I could just talk to the baby and tell him I loved him and kind of not close that chapter on like being a mom, but come to terms with it. Why? So, highly recommend. It's terrible, but it was very necessary. And I did feel a whole lot better after I did it. And it is something that I think when you are in denial and when you're moving through grief, it's easy to just kind of skip over and wish those hard feelings away. But like sitting in it and actually writing about it kind of forces you to be fully present with what you're going through and process those emotions. And as painful as it was also beneficial. So if you are going through something like this, I recommend, if that feels right for you, maybe that's a way that you can kind of honor that life. So one of the final reasons that I wanted to do this podcast episode is because as I've been going through this chapter of my life over the last 2 months, the timing was very synonymous with another woman's case in Texas. She's 31 years old. She's a mother of 2, and she got national attention by requesting that she was able to get a medical abortion because her pregnancy was non-viable. It's really easy to see these political headlines and form an opinion about them when you've never experienced any of the heartache that comes with those decisions. I'm not going to argue politics with anybody on here, but I do think it's really important to humanize this issue. When I was in the thick of it, really struggling, I saw one video of this woman who was denied a medical abortion because a court didn't think that it was necessary. And you see this woman talking, and all she wanted was to bring home a healthy baby girl. She just wanted to expand her family. She didn't want this. But instead of being able to deal with this very personal medical decision between her family and her doctor, it was publicized for the world to scrutinize, judge, and say if it was right or wrong. So instead, this poor woman, whose doctor came out and said that she needed to get this abortion for her own health and safety, and that the child would not be able to survive, she had to go to another state to be able to get that abortion. I know that anytime abortion is talked about, it is a heavily politicized issue. Again, if you haven't been through anything like this, it's really easy to formulate an opinion. I've seen a lot on social media, I've seen a lot on the news talking about either you are pro-life, you're pro-choice, you either believe in it or you don't. It's black, it's white. I'm here to say no, it's not. And when you put blanketed laws over people's bodies, you leave zero room for humanity. And that's just not fair. The overturning of Roe v. Wade affects women everywhere. In Texas, you can't even get an exception for rape or incest, and you have to prove that it is medically necessary. Who proves that? Not a doctor. Because in the case of this woman, her doctor did say it was medically necessary. But a bunch of people that have nothing to do with her or her circumstance are in a courtroom deciding what she's allowed to do with her body. I don't know anybody that can hear that and say that's right. I've always believed that a woman should have the right to choose what she does with her body. And whatever you believe in, like I said, I'm not here to argue. I grew up in a very strict conservative home, and I've heard and seen through social media and seen through the news people talking about the fact that women are using abortion as a form of birth control and abusing it. Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, just getting off of the surgery that is also used for abortions, it is horribly painful. It is very traumatic. It is very expensive. And it is not an easy way out. I don't know anybody who is using it for that reason. And ultimately, it shouldn't be up to anybody but the person that's making that decision. Because in the long run, these court officials, these people that are making decisions about women's bodies, it doesn't impact them in any way. This woman deserved to have the right to have privacy between her doctor and herself, because not only is she now mourning the loss of her baby, she now has to deal with the opinions of a bunch of other people. It's just not right. And going through the experience that I've been through over the past 2 months has given me just a conviction to pay attention. I know this stuff, it's confusing. And the overturning of Roe versus Wade, I know most of us don't agree with it. And there's very little action that we can take. But 2024 is an election year. And I will be paying attention. And I want you to pay attention too. Let's humanize this issue. Because if you were in the situation, you would want to be able to have the right to choose and not have people judge and bully you and criticize you. I think we just need a little bit more humanity, a little bit more grace with other people, with ourselves. And I'm hoping that by talking about my experience, even though it's different, everybody's situation is so different. And again, that's why I'm talking about the fact that we shouldn't just have blanketed laws that don't allow for humanity, because every situation is so different. But if you are somebody that has experienced what I've described has been my journey, if you know somebody that has, if God forbid you do in the future, I want you to be able to have something that you can look back to and just remember that you're not alone. And I'm here and happy to talk to anybody that needs somebody to talk to through this, because again, it is so isolating. The last thing that I will leave you with is I am somebody with really strong faith. Talked about that quite a bit on the podcast. And one of the biggest blessings through this chapter has been the amount of outpouring of prayers and love. And typically when I've gone through grief or something major has happened, I've questioned why, or I've been frustrated or angry with God. And that never happened here. I never felt that way. Instead, I've been really frustrated and angry with my body, which has been a whole other issue that I've been unpacking, because I have spent almost a decade, a lot of time investing in my body, caring for my body, appreciating it, nourishing it, loving it, healing it, just really taking care of it and encouraging other people to take care of theirs as well. I came out with this confidence course in July and felt like I was the most confident I had ever been in who I was as a person, in my body, in my profession, in what I was creating. And then something like this just completely rocked my world. And it really made me feel betrayed by my body. And ultimately, that's just rocked my confidence. It's made me question a lot. And it's forced me to have a different perspective. And I've actually been taking myself through my own confidence course as a student. And when I first started doing it, I felt like I couldn't even relate to myself, even though I'm the one in the video. Like, couldn't relate, was really struggling, wasn't super hopeful that things were working. But as I started implementing it and sticking to my habits and to my routines and starting to actually work on my mindset, I started getting me back again, which honestly is the only reason that I'm even able to be here and talk on this podcast with you guys, and why I've been able to heal as much as I have up to this point is really because I've been implementing the things in that course and really practicing what I preach. So if you've made it this far in the episode, I don't know what you're going through. But if you're in a place where your confidence is a little shaky, or if you're just struggling with self-esteem, or your mental health is not in a good place and you're struggling with your mindset, or you're trying to form new goals and new resolutions, but feel like you can't accomplish them or you're overwhelmed. I get it. I've been there and I am there right now in this season. And I just really highly encourage you that if you want to do something for yourself, if you're ready to invest in yourself, this is something that I know can make a tremendous impact on your life, because not only is it everything that I did over the last 10 years to change my life, but as I'm going through this season, it's continuously impacting me in the most positive way. And I'm really proud of it. And I want it to reach as many people as possible, because I want to create a culture of confident women, but I also don't want anyone listening to this podcast right now to feel helpless or alone or overwhelmed with insecurity or struggling with your self-esteem and feeling frozen and not knowing what to do, because I have something that I know can help you. So if that's something that you're interested in, go to jordancanova.com. There's all the information there if you want to sign up for the course. Awesome. Shameless plug, but I mean, that's the reality. It's helping me, and I hope it can help you too. So we will be coming out with season 5 soon. I'm very excited about it. I'm excited for you guys to see the guests. I'm excited for us to have that consistency again, where I'm able to talk to you guys every single week. This is my favorite part about what I do with More Than, and something that just really fuels me and lights me up. And this community is something that I am just so proud of. So thank you for supporting me through everything. You guys have seen me through many, many chapters over the past 3 years. And I know I'm just going to continue going through a whole lot more, but having your support and your love means a ton to me. So thank you for listening. As always, if this episode impacted you, please share it with a friend, rate, review, follow, download, subscribe, all the things. It helps us grow and reach more people. So thank you again for taking the time to listen, and I love you guys.